Imagine if you're a sensei with your very own traditional dojo. Until one day, you decide to just shut it down, close it, leave your students, and fly to another country to become an MMA fighter. That's exactly what my friend Rokas did, and today he's gonna share his story, and more importantly, what you can learn from his amazing journey. Stay tuned. What's up? I'm Jesse from KarateByJesse.com, aka the Karate Nerd, and today I'm joined by my very good friend Rokas. Thank you so much for being here in my dojo, and I think we should take it from the beginning. Why did you start with a traditional martial art, but then decided to just leave it all behind and become an MMA fighter? Take us back there.
Okay. Well, it's quite a big story. Obviously, there were many twists and turns, but basically, to put it simply, it began with me growing up in a troubled city where there was a lot of crime. And I was a peaceful kid all the time, and my friends got beaten up around me because we were all a bunch of peaceful kids.
Okay.
But I never wanted to hurt anyone back in the day. And I mean, I wasn't a fighter.
No.
But I wanted to defend. I wanted to defend my friends. And then that's when I learned about Aikido.
And so what age did you start Aikido?
So actually, I just turned 14.
Okay.
So my birthday just passed, and maybe a few weeks later, I was invited into an Aikido training.
Yeah.
And I loved it from the day one. I always loved the samorai. I always loved the samurai sword, the Japanese culture. Exactly. And when I saw that Aikido was a lot about them.
Yeah.
The hakama, and there is sword work, and it's just so aesthetic. I felt like this is what I need to do. Yeah. And that's where I devoted to it and spent.
So you completely fell for it.
Absolutely.
You became passionate or obsessed, depending on who you ask.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
I could say both. And I like to make this joke that I was still going to school at that time, and initially there was school and I did Aikido as a side thing, but eventually it became I did Aikido and the school became a side thing.
Oh, that's exactly like me by karate.
And eventually when I turned 18, or I was close to 19, school was ending and I needed to choose what to do, and I realized I love Aikido so much. Yeah. And it was a risky a risky decision, but I thought, you know what, instead of studying, I'll become a living student at Uchigaeshi and go for my dream, try to become a full-time Aikido sensei. Yeah. And that was the next stage. So,
if you don't mind me asking, what did your parents think when you said, I'm gonna be a full-time Aikido sensei?
It was terrible. it was a disaster in their eyes. I came up with this idea. I think one day I came down to my parents and I said, you know what, I won't study, I will go to Japan and be a living student.
Did you go to Japan?
Actually, I never did.
No?
I never ended up. The reason was because it was hard to get there for me, obviously financially and everything. Yeah. But at the same time, you needed a recommendation. And the dojos in Lithuania didn't have that at the moment.
I see.
But initially, that was my idea, and I told it to my mom. And I remember to this day the look on her face. She was washing dishes and she just stared at me. I think, I just terrified her. And then we began what I call the long war.
The long war?
Yeah.
Okay.
For 2 years, I was trying to convince my parents that this is a good idea. They were trying to convince me that's a bad idea.
I see.
Eventually, they agreed. I have an older brother, so they decided. They said, you know what? My brother Arnes. It's like, Arnes is a normal kid. He did the right thing. Let's leave Rokas as this experimental child and let's see what happens. They thought I will fail miserably. I'd say I didn't. And eventually they became happy with the results. Yeah. But back then they thought I'm making a huge mistake.
So you ended up trying to become a professional teacher, and that's what you became. You had your own dojo, you had students, it was your full-time job basically, right?
It was, absolutely.
And tell us about that time. What would a normal day look like?
In a way, it was very intense. It was not only like a job, it was also like a role. Yeah. I would say it's a 24/7 job.
Right, a lifestyle.
Right, absolutely. And then the people, I had a very close relationship with my students. It was not just I come teach and I go home and that's it. But I was always there for them. We'd have meetings before, after. We'd have special community events. It was
Yeah.
really like a tight community, and obviously I was in the leading role of it.
And so you successfully became a sensei. What did your parents say now? Did they still not really believe it would last, or?
Actually, the turning point was when they came down. I was a living student in Switzerland, an Aikido living student, and they came down for my black belt exam, and that's actually the first time they really saw me do Aikido, although it was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years into it.
Yeah.
But then when they saw me doing Aikido, they saw the community, they met my sensei, they really felt the passion for it, and that's the moment when they started believing in me. And so when I came back to my country, Lithuania, and I started opening the dojo, they were completely supportive. They helped me build it, they helped me with the rent, they helped me with everything. And to this day, they have quite a strong belief in what I do, and that really means a lot to me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So you kept up this whole Aikido thing, you had your students, you were a sensei, but then something must have turned. There must have been some point where you said like, I'm not sure this is the right path for me, because right now you're an MMA fighter, and you don't have your dojo. So what happened?
Well, it was a slow, gradual transition.
Yeah.
I knew already that Aikido, or the way I perceive it, that it's not a powerful practice for self-defense.
Okay.
And initially I did start Aikido for self-defense.
Right.
But I never had the confidence that I could deal with the physical altercation. And I had ideas that maybe in extreme situations it would work, but it never gave me that strong confidence of, I know exactly how to deal with physical attack.
Yeah.
And that realization was with me. I realized that most
you always had a little bit of a doubt in your mind about the street effectiveness of Aikido.
Yeah. Even when I was attacked, and I was attacked a bunch of times, especially in my teens.
Shit.
The city I lived in was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I never knew what to do. Like I trained Aikido for free to 4 years.
And you never managed to use your Aikido skills?
Not really. Like
no?
I would freeze up in that situation. I wouldn't know what to do, and eventually I would just punch or go for kind of a random instinctual attack rather than grab me.
Right. So would you say that Aikido itself wasn't the right thing for you, or that you were using Aikido in the wrong way? What do you think is kind of the idea here?
It really depends on who you would ask.
Yeah.
Some people would argue more for one side than the other.
Yeah.
But in my own opinion, I'd say Aikido is not designed to do that.
No.
Maybe it can work in a certain way in certain situations.
Yeah.
But Aikido is very, you could say it's very clean.
Yeah.
The way you train on the mat, even the attacks, and this is even a common criticism that even Aikido people talk about.
Yeah.
That the attacks are, it's like a shomanuchi or komanuchi, or the punches.
Yeah.
They're not really replicating the real attacks that you would be attacked with in everyday life.
Yeah.
Some of the grabs maybe, but just the attacks and the way you train, there's not much pressure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cooperation.
Exactly.
And
isn't that one of the points of Aikido, to like harmonize with the opponent?
Yeah, it actually absolutely is. But the way I see it now, it's just the initial stage that you would need to grow through.
Yeah.
Because initially it's important to feel how you blend with the partner which is cooperating.
Yeah.
But then nobody will cooperate with you if they attack you in
right.
reality. So
Yeah.
you need to, and the idea behind it is that you will be able to do it instinctually.
Yeah.
But I believe that you have to experience that in
Yeah.
safe environment.
Yeah.
And that's why pressure testing, sparring,
Yeah.
and that's what part of what MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu inspired me later on.
Yeah.
Because you have the pressure testing, which is I think lacking in Aikido.
So there was this kind of a lack of fulfillment from Aikido. It had some parts that resonated with you, but also some stuff you felt was missing from what you initially wanted from martial arts, which was essentially to defend yourself and be confident, right?
Very true, very true.
So what happened then? How did this transition happen?
So I noticed, so I had an understanding that it's not exactly what I thought it is. I knew that it's not making me into a good fighter, a good self-defense expert.
So at this point, just let me interrupt you.
Of course.
There are two possible paths, because I think a lot of traditional martial artists have this kind of lingering thought in their heads that this might not be the best thing, but I've invested so much time and energy and money probably into this training. So I just put on my blinders and I stick to it, right? Or you do what you did.
That's a good point.
Tell us about that.
That's a very good point. Obviously, that thought came into my mind as well, like that I'm taking a big risk by becoming vocal about the issues. And the way it happened is I was already running, as a side thing, a YouTube channel for just like Aikido tutorials.
Okay.
I explained it in a simple way and people liked it, so I kept publishing them.
Yeah.
But I would get comments from Aikidoka that, oh, you're doing this technique wrong and you're doing this technique wrong. And not to say they were, I was doing it right and they were wrong, but I would say to them eventually, like, it doesn't really matter that much because it's not like we're really going to use that technique if somebody attacks. And they were upset about it. They didn't see the point that I'm making. And so I got upset about that so much, I thought I need to make a video where I show that Aikido is not exactly what people think it is. And so I organized what I call the Aikido versus MMA sparring.
Okay.
So I found a professional MMA fighter who was kind enough to spar with me in a light manner. Yeah. And where I literally did my best to try to do something against him, like wrist block or any other technique. And I have it on record. Nothing worked that I knew that I will fail, but it was even worse than I thought. I could do nothing against him. Hello everyone, my name is Rokas, and today I'm in an MMA dojo. And when before publishing that, I realized it's a big risk because it'll expose. I was aware that I'm not that type of person that could deal with an MMA fighter, but some of my students maybe had that illusion, some of my viewers maybe had that illusion. So I realized that I'm completely exposing myself, and the other way, as you mentioned, would be to just pretend nothing happened and not to publish that video. Yeah. But for me, truth is very important. I feel like if I would have lied to myself, I wouldn't be happy, and happiness is important as well. I thought, you know what, this is a big risk, I might take some damage from it, but it's worth it.
Now you're on this path. Your video is out there, you've exposed yourself, there is no turning back. So why not try to make your Aikido effective instead of just abandoning it and just, you know?
So that's a great question, and I did try. I did try for about almost a year. I tried cross-training and asking. I used the online platform to find people who would know what they're doing and help me out in reinventing my Aikido. Yeah. But after a year's effort, I looked at it and I realized
this is shit.
It's like I'm not the right person to do that.
You felt you didn't have the knowledge to
Exactly. It's like if I would want to make Aikido efficient, I would have to be efficient at something which is already efficient.
Right. How did your students react when you said, "Hey guys, I'm done with the Aikido stuff. I'm gonna be an MMA fighter"?
It was. Sometimes
did they feel kind of betrayed, or did they kind of see this coming?
It was such a big part of their lifestyle, and I came out of nowhere because I didn't talk about. I'm thinking about closing the dojo. I made the decision in one day. Yeah. The next day I meet them, my core group, and I say, well, you know what, I'm planning to close the dojo. And
did they start crying?
I think there were some tears. I mean, there wasn't like pure on crying, but I saw the tears, especially in some of the lady students. And actually that hit me harder than I thought. I thought they would be like, at that moment I was becoming dispassionate about Aikido. Yeah. And I almost expected them to be dispassionate as well. Yeah. But it turned out they were more passionate than I thought. And so when I said I'm closing the dojo, I heard them more than I expected. So that was a big challenge to later think how can I deal with this to leave the community in the best way I can. Yeah. So that was not easy.
So let's fast forward. Yeah. You left Aikido, shut down your dojo, left your home country, and what was your first experience like when it came to MMA? Did you get just grounded and pounded into oblivion, or did you manage to use some of your Aikido training to cope? What was your experience?
So right after closing the school, the dojo, I went to the States, Portland, where I did a 6 months intensive training. Okay. Of MMA.
Like a crash course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was the good thing. It was for regular people. Okay. And it was kind of an intelligent decision by myself to not throw myself in the den of wolves. Yeah. But just to start with everyone from zero. And so the gym that I trained there is it's very welcoming, very friendly. So actually, I wasn't smashed or destroyed.
That's good.
And so so I gradually kind of grew into the world of MMA, and I started loving it very much. Okay.
And what did you discover about MMA that you maybe did not expect?
It's hard to say necessarily what I didn't expect from the MMA itself, because I kind of had a vision for what I want. But one thing which was surprising for me to discover, it kind of became this full circle from looking back to my childhood.
Yeah.
Because I started off Aikido wanting, as you actually said it, wanting that self-confidence, wanting to be a powerful fighter.
Yeah.
But in the Aikido community, that's kind of neglected. That's presented in a way. Again, not everyone would agree with me, but oftentimes it's presented as a bad desire to want to be a fighter. It's kind of seen as a negative thing. Yeah. And I slowly dropped it, wanting to be this peaceful warrior rather than just a fighter. But when I trained MMA, I started realizing that part was always in me. I actually always wanted to be capable as a fighter, as a warrior, to be able to defend myself, to be able to protect others. Yeah. And training MMA, there's so much pressure, there's so much sense of danger, and you become used to it that now when I walk in the streets and if I see a physical altercation becoming possible, there's no sense of strong fear that was there anymore. I feel like, okay, there's some sense of there's still some stress, but at the same time I would feel I know what I would do, and if somebody gets attacked, I would step in with confidence. I would try to deal with that situation. While in the past that ability was not there with Aikido. And so I was, but mainly what surprised me was the realization that actually I always wanted that, but I suppressed it through Aikido, and then I rediscovered that desire, and it's very enjoyable actually to go there.
So what has been your biggest challenge when it comes to this transition from a traditional martial art to a more modern combat sports oriented martial art?
It's again, good question. It's almost hard to say. I think,
like, what do you struggle with the most?
I definitely am going for a challenge right now.
Okay.
So I guess that's most on my mind.
Yeah.
So the next step that I made after Portland, I moved to Dublin to train at Straight Class Gym Dublin, Ireland, which is one of the most biggest MMA gyms in Europe, at least, with a lot of professional fighters. Yeah. And I train with them, and most of them have 3 to 10 times more experience than I do.
So they're like black belts, and you're like a white or yellow belt?
Exactly. And I try to deal with them toe to toe. Yeah. And that means 90% of the time I quote unquote lose. Yeah. Which I think, looking back, I never had too much trouble with that. But I think that when you look at it in a certain way, it is a big challenge to anyone, including myself. Is in Aikido, when you become good enough, you don't get challenged much anymore. Because you know the techniques.
I've seen the videos. People throw themselves. They just have to do this.
You know exactly how to do it. They know how to fall, and
but there's no real chaos involved. Exactly. It is very predetermined.
Exactly. And so you learn how to look good. Yeah. And you're the black belt, you're the sensei, so nobody questions you, and you become comfortable at being the winner all the time. Yeah. And in MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm sure Judo as well, or there's some martial arts which have a lot of pressure. That some of them I had never tried. But then in that you're forced to learn that you will never be the best. That there's always someone better than you, and that you're forced to always realize your limitations of how much you don't know. And it's a great and very healthy experience, I find.
Humbling.
So it's just, I feel like you always have to find a balance. Like you still have to win some, lose some. And sometimes when you keep on losing, that's a tough challenge.
It's a negative spiral.
And it just takes a lot of mental fortitude as well to say, okay, I'm learning, I am developing. You know, if I get tapped, if I get choked, armbarred, whatever, then I'm still learning something. It's not a loss, it's a win. But it's not an easy process, and it's something that you go through in Aikido for a year or two in the beginning because you don't know the techniques. You're the newbie. Exactly. But few years down the road, you keep on climbing up, and the challenge just almost disappears. So,
exactly.
So that's a big challenge.
And then you decided to do a cage fight.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That was there.
And how did that go?
It was an extremely interesting experience. Just going into the cage, they literally lock you there. And it's just such an interesting realization because you're both standing there, two individuals, realizing that, and that realization hit me, that the only reason we're there mainly is to hurt each other.
Yeah.
That person is there to only to defeat me, to hurt me bad, and my purpose is for their. Obviously, there's more greater purposes. You know, you're fighting against yourself. You're overcoming challenges. But if you break it down in the most simplistic way, the reason you're there is to beat each other up. And that's just nuts. That's just mental. And it's like, and the funniest thing is, you make that decision on your own. Nobody forces you to go there. You go on your own will to the cage to have that experience for 3 times 3 minutes, and it's very interesting to go there.
But as somebody who started martial arts to defend yourself, now you're forced to also attack somebody, and that's the opposite of defending yourself, because you're not just waiting for him to do stuff, you're actually actively trying to hurt somebody. Is that mindset shift difficult, or do you kind of enjoy that killer instinct feeling?
You know, there's a great phrase that the coach I'm learning with from right now, John Kavanagh, he said, he was defining violence, because many people consider MMA to be very violent. But I liked his definition of violence, that violence is when you're hurting someone against their will. And this is kind of an interesting twist, but it makes sense that when you're stepping into the cage, you're both there willing. And so it's technically it's not violence.
No.
You're not beating up the other person against his will. He's there to do that.
And there are rules, referees, the sport.
Right. So you're not trying, I never had that, even then I didn't have that killer intention.
No.
Or killer feeling, or the sense of I want to destroy him or anything. But the sense that the other person was almost like a metaphor for me. It was more of, I'm fighting, this is a challenge that I need to overcome.
Exactly.
So it wasn't personal.
No.
It wasn't like I hate you or anything. And I think that helped. So every punch I landed, or in any other technique I did, was, it's as strange as it sounds, but I honestly felt like that was for the greater good. To show that it's possible to do that. That anyone can step into the cage, and you need to, if you face a challenge, you need to do your best, and no matter what happens. So for me, it was more of a metaphor than an actual, I go hurt this person. And I think that helped me still feel like, in a way that was, as strange as it sounds, in a way that there was still some Aikido there, in the sense of perspective. It wasn't about violence. It wasn't about hurting the other person. It was more about the challenge itself.
Are there other, whether it's a mindset thing or a tactic or technique or strategy, is there anything that you feel like you're bringing into your new MMA journey from Aikido that you feel is still useful, even though it's a completely different kind of martial art? Except the break falling.
Break falling is awesome. I think that's one of the best things in Aikido. I do recognize certain abilities from Aikido coming in. So like managing the distance or feeling the distance. Also the ability to understand, to perceive the body mechanics. Because in Aikido there's so many intricate, complicated techniques. There's so many things you need to memorize and position your body in the most intricate ways in the relationship to another person, that when I'm shown a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu technique or a boxing technique or anything, my mind is able to see and to replicate that in my body. So it's my personal opinion, and hopefully I'm not wrong, but I feel like that makes me a very good student. Because I'm able to take what I see and replicate it, because I did it for such a long time with Aikido. So the sense of just body awareness, understanding how my body works, how the body of another person works, I think that becomes a huge advantage the more and more I train, and that comes obviously from Aikido.
Do you have any recommendations for other traditionalists out there who maybe are searching for something else?
I think the bursting of the bubble, which I know